Hey, Cami.
Hey Pat, how are you?
Good. I just saw you like a few minutes ago. So we just finished up one of our sessions on the Confident Grief Coach class. So it's fun to see you again right now.
Yes, it is, and I love that we're continuing this conversation because class is always fun, and we had an awesome session diving into accessing your inner healer and just all of the tools in our toolkit that we can turn to for self-care in grief, for coping with those grief waves, for those hard moments that, sometimes we feel stuck. So I would love to continue that conversation in this space and
Yep.
uh, dive into a little bit more of what you've been learning with the book that you're reading from Mary Frances O'Connor and the Grieving Body, and just a little bit about coping strategies and how we might be able to offer a little insight with coping strategies and patterns of avoidance.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It is funny how, things just kind of coalesce together and, the energy just like, oh, because I listen to this when I'm walking because I'm going to be honest with my chronic pain in my neck. I can't read as well. I don't have my concentration, but it's so great when I'm out walking because so I've been listening to her audio book and then I come back and then I actually have the paper or the hard copy because I like to have the physical too so I can, you know, get quotes and mark it up and that type of thing. But I was listening yesterday, I think it was, about Mary Frances is talking about coping strategies like within grief and she's talking about um how the liver and the lungs, so she's talking, which is just very interesting because we were just talking about the Chinese five element theory in our class and how certain emotions can settle in, and we know grieving can really settle into our lung energy system, and a lot of people will end up with colds, flus, autoimmune diseases that stem from the grieving being so integrated into their body. And the liver, we know, has a lot of emotions, and the liver is really our detoxifier, so it has to do with you see blockages in the liver energy system when people are dealing with chemical dependency and addictions and that type of thing. And so she was talking about how oftentimes we may lean into a coping strategy that may not be the healthiest behavior, you know. So taking a drink, right after your loved one died, just to calm us down and feeling. And I just told you, I have this chronic neck pain, which is getting better. But there's sometimes when the pain is so severe that at dinner time I will have a glass or two of wine because it is my way of physically relaxing my body. But she talks about taking the time to think before you pour that glass, or think before you light that cigarette or that joint or whatever the case may be. And just, is it something that I need? Or is this a way that I'm trying to cope with my sadness, my grief? And it kind of raised an awareness for me because it was like, okay, how much of, if I'm sitting down and having a glass of wine, I know that I'm having it to kind of settle me down a little bit and it does help the pain. But then again, am I using it as a unhealthy way of processing? Because then I could be like drinking bottles and bottles of wine if I want to be out of pain, which I don't want to do. Um, and so it's kind of thinking through, am I doing it for pain or am I doing it for emotion? Right. And that's what, when we're talking about grief and grieving and all of that, it's like, having some thoughtfulness about before we reach for it. And it's fine if we do reach for it. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not, for most people, it's going to be okay. I have a client who mentioned that right after her significant other died, she was finding herself that she was looking for a cocktail. It was her way to just like decompress and relax and already feeling a little bit numb, but it just made her feel a little bit better. But then she realized, this is not something that I should be doing because I do have an addictive personality, which most of us do. I mean, we use that term addiction. Most of us have those things, whatever it may be. It might be exercise, it might be food, it might be whatever it is. But she said, I realized that I need to be cautious about this because this is a big family thing. We have this in our family, and I don't want to end up being that, and ending up abusing alcohol. That's not going to help me in the long term. And so she really made a conscious effort of I'm choosing when I do it and where I do it because it's important for me to not let it tip it over the edge. And I think that was a pretty powerful thing as far as, thinking through that coping strategy. It may not be the healthiest. And so, how might someone who's grieving lean into something that's a little bit more healthier for their body,
Yeah.
right? Not just their mind, but their body.
Right. Yeah, and I like that you mentioned, it's not to shame the behavior. It's not that you're doing your grief wrong because you want a glass of wine at night. I think I've seen this so many times in my own family and with myself in my own process of, there was a time and a place where I know I was dependent on, for me, it was marijuana. That was my escapism, and how my relationship with using marijuana was to avoid feeling and to stay focused on something. It helped me stay busy and active as another form of distracting myself from my grief. And how, for a while that was an important part of my process, because I mean, honestly, it led me to my rock bottom. And then from there, that's when I reframed so many habits and patterns and choices that I was making that were going to either serve me or just continue that perpetual distraction and that avoidance that I was leaning into. And I think that so many people can get stuck in that pattern of avoidance, and it happens unconsciously. It just becomes a habit, and then next thing we know, I know for me it was next thing I know, every waking moment of my day I was high. I was in college and I was doing all these other things, and that was just, that it wasn't healthy for me, and it took me getting sick to really change that. But I think for so many people, if we don't do that work to find those coping strategies that are going to allow us to have a higher level of awareness, that are going to support our processing and are going to support us in tending to our grief and in finding um, those tools that are going to support us in our healing journey, then if we're not doing that, or we don't know how, or we don't have the support or the resources to lean into that part of our healing, that it might turn into, a dependence on a substance, and that really doesn't support all of the turmoil that's happening underneath all the time. That is the intention usually of turning to a substance, is because we don't know how to deal with what's going on underneath. I know that was the case for me, and for so many people. Then it ends up turning to a really super unhealthy dependence on a substance that, could lead to alcoholism, could lead to all kinds of other issues. And I know for the people in my family, particularly my dad was an alcoholic, and I know for him, he had a ton of unprocessed grief that he just did not feel equipped to sit with in his lifetime. So he turned to alcohol, and that eventually killed him, But yeah, I think this is an important conversation to have, because it's not that it's not that you're a bad person if you're turning to substances. It's just that it might be an indicator that we need more support and that we need
Right.
more resources to really deal with what's making us want to check out, what's making us want to avoid or turn to the substance. And I love what you said about having that awareness of taking that stop and that pause before you reach for the drink or before you light up the joint or whatever it is, to check in with yourself and tune in, okay, well, how am I feeling? Is there a reason why I am turning to this right now? And if you're in a place where you want to explore that, great. I know for me, that was the difference between recreationally smoking weed and using it as a coping mechanism. That changed
Right.
the whole intention of me wanting to light something up, because I was either running away and doing it out of fear and out of avoidance, or I'm doing it because I'm in a good place and I'm wanting to have fun.
No,
So
just enjoy myself, right? Like sometimes I like my glass of wine and it's, a social thing and it's wonderful. But yeah, when you start using it as the avoidance of, because grief is so important. We need to feel it,
yeah.
right? We need to really feel it in order to kind of move into that next step. We don't get over the grieving or the grief. The grieving will change over time. But it's like how we shift, and that's what Mary Frances was talking about is, our coping strategy leads to a change in how we feel, since our feelings often arise in response to a stressful or unpleasant situation. So, flexibility in how we cope or in changing what we do and how we think about a situation gives us a wider repertoire to deal with the various new experiences we confront as grieving people. So, we just talked about we actually just met with a woman that it's the anniversary, the wedding anniversary, and her husband, has been gone for only a few years. So, but she was at peace. She said, I feel peaceful. But what she leaned into was, I have already booked myself a massage. I'm going to buy myself flowers. I'm going to do some of these things that are my self care.
Mhm.
And we talk a lot about that. And so, sharing because of your embodied grief support, that's kind of your whole mission in life, is to help people in this whole embodiment. And what does that look like? So do you want to share a little bit about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah. The whole embodiment piece for me was really important, something that I could lean into. And that was the big shift from me going from being high every hour of my life in avoidance of my grief to how do I stop running away and how do I actually get really present with myself? And for me, yoga and movement and the breath work and all of that, the body work was an important tool for me to lean into because I didn't really know how to do it otherwise. And we're not taught these things. We're not
Mm-mm.
taught how to process our emotions in a healthy way or how to be with something like grief. So that's where I see this embodiment piece being incredibly supportive because we're working with the nervous system. Like Mary Frances O'Connor was saying, we're in a state that we don't feel good and we're reaching towards something, whether it's healthy or unhealthy. Our goal is to shift how we're feeling because we don't like to not feel good. And I think that moment where we can recognize, okay, I'm here, this is what I'm feeling, and to be able to show up for ourselves in that way, to be present enough to have that awareness to recognize I'm feeling really shitty today and I really want to reach for that joint because I don't want to sit with this. But in that moment, when we can take that pause, then we get to decide how to move forward and change our state and change how we're feeling, or if we're going to continue to suppress it and shove it down. So for me, the embodiment piece was a tool that I could lean into that one helped me regulate my nervous system because we know that the body is so involved in our grieving process and so involved with how our mood and how we feel emotionally and mentally.
Mhm.
So turning to tools that were going to help me to calm down so that I felt more capable of exploring the big scary grief that was underneath why I wanted to run away. So I think that's the first thing, and something that I often empower my clients with are these coping strategies that are going to help soothe the nervous system. Because if we're in a place of that fight or flight panic or extremely depressive state, we might not feel resourced enough to explore what's really underneath that. And that's normal because we just don't have the capacity for it. Our nervous system is already overwhelmed. So the first thing that we need to do is to soothe that and to come back into a regulated state, which can be hard enough on its own. And practicing that more and more will allow us more space and resources to dive into what's really underneath that depressive mood, or what's really underneath what's causing that panic attack, and how might I be able to clear that out so that it's not causing this panic. You talked about the Chinese five element theory about how grief settles in the lungs. Well, that's where exactly where my panic was happening. It was like this grief wanted to move and it just wanted to expand
Mhm.
and shift, but I wasn't letting it. I was like shoving it in. So then it just blew up inside of me and caused a panic attack. And then as soon as I found those tools through the embodiment strategies, through yoga, through breathing, through deep diving into my grief, I cleared that out and I haven't had a panic attack since, because that energy moved and it no longer needed to be suppressed in my body. I had those tools to move it and to shift it in a healthier way rather than run away from it. So I think the the coping strategies that involve nervous system regulation can be extremely powerful. And then following that, the strategies that allow us to develop more of that awareness and that curiosity as far as, okay, well, what is this grief about? What is this feeling or this emotion about? For me, that's journaling. That's calling a friend and talking about, hey, this is what's coming up for me. That's having a
Mhm.
coaching session and talking with the professional about, oh my gosh, I think I just need to be with this because it's really bothering me and I'm needing to explore this more because it's not sitting right with me. So that combination of the nervous system regulation, getting into your body, learning how to be present with yourself, and then that curiosity to go deeper with the support and the tools and the resources, for me, has been the helpful journey that's allowed me to shift to feeling capable and confident with showing up for myself in my grief rather than wanting to run away from it and be high all the time because I didn't know where to even begin.
Right, right. And I think I'm just thinking about, and the pain. We have a physical pain, we have the psychological pain, and I shared in the class last night. I was Googling, we all have this inner healer within. Our bodies are just amazing and will heal ourselves. It's pretty amazing what can happen. I've witnessed miracles throughout my experiences with Qigong and different things like that. But I was, having a lot of pain because I had some physical therapy yesterday. And last night it was, how do I really tap into my natural opioid that, but it's not a hormone, but it's actually like getting that going in our bodies because we have a natural morphine like substance, and that can happen and occur within our bodies. We don't need to take an external one. So
Mhm.
I Google it, like, okay, so is there anything that I'm missing that maybe I could do to help with the pain? And it was interesting because it was movement, right? So whether it's yoga or some other kind of movement, walking, I'm a walking person, and that's part of it, is just getting some good little aerobic movement going on. Acupuncture was listed as one, which is just incredible because acupuncture will go into these points and help release. So it's releasing energy, but it's also releasing pain and going into those pain receptors to help with that. Um, Talking, with someone, you just mentioned that, so there's so many like simple tools that actually
Mhm.
laughing. So when we're grieving, but laughter ups it, and it brings these good hormones to start releasing, the good stuff that's gonna help change even physically in our body. And so
Mhm.
I think that's, for me, is I'm always fascinated as a nurse, as a background in nursing and all of that, but just also seeing through the ancient Chinese wisdom, of that type of thing, and the alternative complementary type medicine that can be utilized is just so powerful. And so then I'm reading this list and I'm going, well, I do meditation, I'm doing all of this. And it actually reaffirmed for me, you're doing what you need to do. And the pain is just letting your body know when you've done too much, which we probably did too much at therapy. And so you back off a little bit, but I'm doing all the right things. And it's empowering to myself knowing that I do have control over this. And I think, we've talked about grieving from all aspects. Once you can find a support system to help you do this and help you, like you were talking about, reflecting, calling, journaling, you know, to be able to, we can affect the change in our body. We can affect the physical symptoms that are showing up in our body. And once we do that, we can achieve that life worth living. And that's really what it's all about. Our loved ones wouldn't want us sitting here being all dejected and shriveled up and unable to carry out normal day-to-day activities. They wouldn't want that for us. I know that. I feel so strongly. So that's where we can lean into that self-care, which seems to be a theme for us today. It's all about self-care and what can we do to, move ourselves forward in that and loving ourselves. It's not only honoring the loved one, it's honoring ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to highlight what you said about having that autonomy to make a choice, to make a change in your life, because we know that we have so many things that are in our control, that we really do have the power over, that we get to change. And there's a lot that's out of our control, right? Especially with grief and all of that. There's so much that we might get hung up on that's outside of our control, and we just feel the need to try to, to control the uncontrollable. Like we can't choose when death is going to come, right? But
Mhm.
there's so much that is within our power to shift how we're feeling and to change our life for the better. And I think that's a point where, for people who might be leaning or dependent on substances or in a hopeless depressive state, it's because, we, the part of our journey that is out of our control, that we're needing or feeling like we need to control or have power over, that we do not have power over, is so forefront in our experience. And we just get so helpless over, there's nothing I could have done. We get all the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, and we get the regret and the guilt and all these things that come up, and it paralyzes us. And
Mhm.
then we feel like, well, there's nothing I can do. This is not going to get better. Therefore, I'm going to drink myself to sleep tonight, or whatever it is that we're turning to, because we feel a sense of hopelessness. And I think there's a big shift when we can find the right coping strategies to turn towards, that are going to empower us to make that choice, to make a change in a way that we can shift our life and shift how we feel, because there is so much that we have control over. And finding, and even if it's just like a small thing, right? It doesn't have to be a big old thing. We talk about these self-care toolboxes that we help our clients build, and that we're teaching in the Confident Grief Coach School right now with this session on accessing your inner healer. Is what are those little things that you can bring into your life on the daily, that are going to help you when you feel like you're going into that spiral of helplessness, or when you feel like, this big emotion is coming up for you and you don't know what to do about it. Well, let's figure out what you can do about it and
Right.
put it on a list and try something on, turn to one of those things and see if that can help you to shift or move that energy so that you don't feel stuck.
And we all have our natural go-tos. We just may not realize it. So that's the stuff that you can put on what we call our Finding Awesome Inspiration to Heal, our faith toolbox list. Is what are some of the go-tos that are just natural for you? For me, listening to birds chirping outside I automatically pause and I just like, oh, I just love that. It just brings such calm to me. I love walking. I love yoga. You love all of that kind of thing. We like being out in nature. We know that there is so many physiological things like being out among the trees and what we're breathing in from, this life and nature. There's just so many things that we can do. It could be just putting on a funny movie or a funny sitcom and just laughing, right? Because that brings those feel good hormones and everything back in. So, um, if anybody here is listening and you're interested in like what would I put on my list, let us know and put a comment down here. We'll send you the 40 ways to faith that I kind of did a brain dump on. More than happy to share some of these tools and certainly reach out and let us know where you're at.
Yeah, and I would love to hear what if you're listening and you're like, "Oh yeah, I've got my go-to thing that helps me feel better." What are those coping strategies that you like to turn to that might be on your go-to feel-good list of like what you do for yourself with self-care and grief? Please leave a comment because we're always looking to expand and help our clients work through these things as well. And I'm sure that someone out there who's seeing that and reading that could also resonate. So yeah, if you have something that you'd like to share, please comment and please share this video with someone that you feel like might need to hear this today.
Yep. Like and subscribe too, because we're trying to grow our channel so that we can support other people. That's how we do it. So hit the like, hit the subscribe, and share and comment. Not a lot, just a little bit. Just stay in touch with us. We'd appreciate it.
Well, thanks. Thank you, Pat, for the conversation. Thanks for those who are tuning in and listening. And yeah, we've got more good stuff coming as far as all things grief support. So thank you. And yeah, let us know what's on your self-care list today or this weekend.
Sounds good. I know what mine is. It's getting out and walking in the sunshine in a little bit.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, talk to you later. Bye bye.
Bye.